As the early morning light begins to seep softly through the small, thick windows of the mill, the world outside is hushed and still. The sky above is a gentle shade of muted grey, tinged with faint hints of pink from the rising sun. Within the quiet interior of the mill, a faint warmth lingers from the previous day's activity, settling into the rough wooden beams and stone walls. The air is filled with a subtle mixture of earthy smells, damp wood, grain dust, and a faint aroma of oil and dried herbs that may have been kept nearby to ward off pests. In this tranquil hour, the miller is beginning his daily routines. He moves slowly, his footsteps muffled on the worn, earthen floor. The first task is often the simple act of waking, which in itself is a gentle process. The miller might have slept on a rough wooden cot or a pallet layered with straw and wool, arranged for comfort in the early dawn hours. The light that filters in through the small shutters falls softly across the room, nudging the sleep away with its calm arrival. He might first stretch his limbs, feeling the coolness of the morning air on his skin, the muscles slightly stiff from hours of rest. The quiet creak of the old timber framing provides a subtle backdrop to this routine. Sometimes, from the nearby hearth, a faint glow indicates that the embers are still warm, a small, enduring fire kept alive through the night to ward off the chill and prepare for the day ahead. The miller might reach for a simple act, perhaps opening the heavy shutter or sliding a ragged cloth curtain aside, allowing the muted daylight to fill the space. As he moves about, he rubs his eyes, the taste of sleep still lingering on his tongue, while the sounds of the humble household begin to awaken. Outside, perhaps, a distant bird call drifts in, soft and steady, a reminder that the world outside the mill remains in gentle motion. His first concern is often the state of the fire in the hearth. A small scoop of ash and a few remaining embers are carefully tended, brushed aside to reveal the glowing red coals beneath. With patience, he may add a bit of dry kindling, small twigs or pieces of seasoned wood, carefully selected the day before, and gently blow or fan to encourage the flames. The crackling of the drying wood fills the space with a steady, calming sound. This process is performed with care, for it is the source of warmth not only for the mill but also for the bread or porridge to be prepared later. As the fire grows, the soft glow illuminates the adjoining room. The simple furnishings include a wooden table, a bench or two, and perhaps a stool near the hearth. Nearby, tools of the trade rest quietly, hammers, wedges, and various implements made from steel, iron, and sturdy timber. The smell of smoke and seasoned wood intertwines with the faint scent of grain, creating a comforting, familiar atmosphere. With the warmth established, the miller moves to the next early task, checking the grain supply. Often, a small wooden bin, perhaps made from oak or ash, holds the ready stock of wheat, rye, or oats. The bin's lid, a simple flat plank, is lifted with a soft scrape. Inside, the grain is dry, light, and a little powdery to the touch. As he gathers a handful, the texture is coarse but smooth, and the scent of freshly harvested grain emanates softly, reminiscent of fields gone to rest for the night. From here, he might draw out a measure, perhaps a wooden scoop or a small bowl, to set aside a modest portion for cleaning or grinding. The grains are stored carefully, in a way that allows airflow to prevent mold and spoilage. In this way, the supplies are kept safe, and the process of maintaining this store is steady and repetitive, performed with quiet mindfulness. There is also the matter of preparing the tools for the day's work. The mill's main feature, the grinding stones, rest protected until needed. These stones are usually large, circular, and made of durable, finely structured sandstone or gritstone. Their surface is rough to the touch but worn smooth in places. From years of use. The miller inspects these stones, running his hand softly along their edges and surface, checking for cracks or unevenness. The upper stone, called the runner stone, is mounted on an axle and can be turned manually or with a small mechanism. The lower stone, the bed stone, remains stationary. The grinding process begins with placing some of the prepared grain into a small hopper or weighting tray that feeds into the central opening of the upper stone. As the miller gently turns the handle or sets the mechanism in motion, the stone begins to rotate slowly, turning the grain into a fine, powdery meal that falls outward onto the surface of the bed stone. This step, performed delicately and steadily, is often accompanied by the faint, rhythmic sound of the stone's surface rubbing together, a quiet, soothing noise that seems to echo softly within the walls. The dust created is fine and light, floating in the air for a moment before settling. Sometimes, the scent of earth and stone mingles with the aroma of grain, creating a natural fragrance of harvest and work. In the medieval period, it was common that the miller or his helper would attend to the grinding, checking periodically to see if the flour was ground to the desired consistency. The process was slow and deliberate, often taking several minutes, giving the observer a meditative rhythm that repeated throughout the day. The milling not only provided bread and food for the household but also supported the community. Peasants, merchants, and local farmers depended on this humble but vital process. A simple pulley system or a small crank exerted force carefully, allowing the movement to be smooth and even. Sometimes, the miller would adjust the height of the trough or hopper, ensuring that the grain entered consistently and did not clog the stones. The angle and depth of the feed were important, to prevent uneven wear or overheating of the stones. These details, fixed through years of experience, were second nature, done with an economy of movement that was both gentle and efficient. The rough texture of the milling stones is especially significant. They are crafted from materials chosen specifically for their hardness and ability to grind grain evenly. The stones have carved grooves, sometimes called furrows, which help propel the flour outward as they rotate. These furrows are formed through hours of attention, worn into the stone's surface over many years, each groove a tiny channel guiding the finely ground flour outward from the center to the edges. While the grinding takes place, the miller might examine other parts of the mill. He might listen for any unusual sounds, perhaps faint clicking or grinding that might suggest the stones need realignment or minor repairs. Occasionally, he might look over the mill's wooden gearing or the axle that turns the upper stone, ensuring their surfaces are smooth and unobstructed. The environment around the mill is calm. Outside, the fields stretch into the distance, a patchwork of greens and browns, interspersed with distant trees. The wind moves gently through the blades of tall grass and the leaves of nearby hedges. Sometimes, a soft breeze wafts through the open window or around the small, grated openings in the wall, carrying with it a faint scent of blooming flowers or damp earth after a light rain. This scene is punctuated by the occasional sound of distant farmyard animals, sheep bleating, hens clucking, or the lowing of cattle. Yet, within the mill, there is only the soft hum of the machinery, the gentle scraping of the millstones, and the quiet footsteps of the miller as he attends carefully to each step. In the early hours of the morning, this process might continue with patience and predictability, each rotation of the stones a gentle reminder of the rhythm of life in the countryside. It is a routine that has persisted over generations, simple, steady, and unhurried, keeping the community supplied with the basic sustenance of bread, which in turn sustains the people and their simple, enduring way of life. And so, the day begins in this unchanging manner, with quiet acceptance and consistent care, the familiar sights, sounds, and smells of the mill, fostering a calm and gentle rhythm that will carry through the hours to come. The light continues its slow ascent, and with it, the habits of the miller deepen into a steady, peaceful pattern. Each moment unfolding naturally from the last, each task performed with gentle purpose, in harmony with the quiet life of the mill. As the gentle light of dawn begins to filter through small, leaded glass windows, the miller's day unfolds with quiet consistency. Outside, the first soft touches of morning air drift across the land, carrying with them the cool scent of dew-laden grass and the faint aroma of damp earth. Inside the mill, the air remains cool but steady, the thick stone walls radiating a gentle warmth that has accumulated overnight. The low hum of distant birds begins to stir the silence, shaping the backdrop of this peaceful early hour. The miller's chambers are modest yet functional. The floors are of packed earth, smoothed over and kept clean from dust and debris through daily sweeping. Nearby, shelves hold simple wooden bowls and utensils, each carefully arranged and used with care. The tools of the trade, the grindstones, the shovels for tending the fire, and the measuring scales, stand arranged in familiar patterns, ready for the day ahead. The space carries the faint scent of hay, old wood, and a hint of mineral from the nearby river stone used in parts of the mill's construction. Around dawn, the first task begins quietly. The miller moves slowly through the dim light, dressed again in sturdy cloth homespun garments, slippers soft from use. The routine is gentle, unhurried. First, the fire in the hearth is rekindled. It is important that the fire is fed carefully, so that the flames are neither too fierce nor too feeble. The fire tongs are used to add small pieces of seasoned wood, typically dry oak or ash, which burn slowly and steadily. The wood comes from strong, seasoned logs, cut and stacked weeks before to ensure dryness and minimal smoke during burning. The sound of crackling wood and the faint glow of embers fill the room, a calming rhythm that sets the tone for the day. The hearth, lined with smooth, heat-resistant stones, absorbs and radiates warmth gradually, creating a comfortable environment. As the fire grows, a small brass or iron kettle is placed gently on the hot coals. Often, the miller will prepare a simple morning drink, perhaps a thin porridge or a basin of cool water, using a small wooden ladle, the motions slow and deliberate. Outside, the world begins to stir more vigorously. The mill's water wheel, gently turning in the river's current, gathers motion under the waking sky. The sound of flowing water, clear and constant, provides a soothing background hum. The wheel, large and made of oak, is constructed with multiple paddles carved into its circumference, each paddle rounded and smooth from years of use. As the wheel turns, it works a mechanism of wooden gears and shafts that connect inside the mill, translating the flow of water into the combined power needed for grinding grain. In this way, the watermill functions quietly and reliably. The miller often checks the water level of the river, ensuring that the flow is steady and not too strong or too weak. Sometimes, a gentle breeze stirs, rustling the leaves of nearby trees and carrying faint sounds of distant livestock. The miller's routine includes inspecting the sluice gates, small wooden shutters that control the flow of water into the mill race. These gates are operated with simple wooden levers, carefully adjusted so that the water flow remains constant, neither too swift nor too slow. The grindstones, large circular discs of natural sandstone, are set into the mill. One is stationary, fixed securely to the stone bed, while the other, the runner stone, rotates smoothly atop it. The stones are about 4 feet in diameter, their edges slightly beveled to allow for even grinding. The surface of the stones is rough but carefully maintained, cleaned and sometimes dressed with fine abrasive materials like crushed quartz or specialized grit to ensure even wear and effective grinding. The process of grinding begins with the miller slowly feeding small amounts of grain, wheat, rye, or barley, into a hopper at the top of the mill. The hopper is a wooden box, about 2 feet square, with a sliding lid to regulate the flow of grain. As the grain drops steadily into the eye of the stationary stone, it begins to be ground down into meal or flour. The miller, seated nearby on a simple wooden bench, watches with trained eyes, adjusting the flow as needed. The grain passes through small, carved channels and grooves on the surface of the stones, which are designed to crack and crumble the husks and hulls, leaving behind finer particles. Throughout this process, the sounds of the mill are gentle but distinct. The whisper of grain slipping and tumbling, the slow creak of the stone surfaces, and the soft slapping sound of ground meal falling into a wooden trough blend into a calming symphony. The trough, lengthwise aligned beneath the stones, is often made of thick, dark oak, gently sloped to guide the meal toward waiting sacks or barrels. The miller carefully measures the flour or meal collected at regular intervals. Small wooden scoops are used to check the consistency and moisture content of the ground product. The flour, in its light, soft form, might be a pale white if milled from fine wheat, or a darker, coarser result from less refined grains. The miller makes mental notes, not hurried, respecting the rhythm of the process. The natural property of stone grinding means the flour is usually quite fine, but always with a slightly rough texture that reflects the age-old craftsmanship. As morning wears on, the miller continues his work, tending to the adjustments that keep the process smooth. Sometimes, a gentle breeze reaches inside the open windows or vents, carrying the fresh scent of wet stone, grain, and water. The air feels cool but humid, with a faint aroma of damp moss clinging to the stones, and a touch of earthy richness from the surrounding landscape. In the stead of rushing adding more grain, the miller proceeds methodically. Each batch of grain is fed in small scoops, measured precisely, ensuring the stones do not become overheated or uneven in wear. It was common that the miller knew his stones intimately, recognizing when they needed dressing or sharpening. Occasionally, a small tool, perhaps a pick or a disc of sandstone, was used to pare down rough spots or smooth out the surface. This maintenance was a quiet and careful task, often done by the miller himself, and done slowly to prevent damage. Between batches, the miller takes a moment to check the water wheel's motion. The paddles turn with a steady, rhythmic sound, the water creating small ripples where it strikes the wheel's paddles. The water's gentle splashes and the faint drip of moisture from the wooden structure add to the peaceful environment. The wheel turns at an even pace, driven purely by the natural flow of the river, which is often characterized by a steady, calming current. The ripples on the water's surface are like gentle patterns, constantly shifting, quietly mirroring the sky above. The process of grinding is often done at a slow and steady pace, respecting the tools and materials involved. Every element, the water, the stones, the grain, plays a part in creating a simple, sustainable rhythm. Much like the cycles of nature, it proceeds with quiet dignity, unhurried and reliable. As mid-morning approaches, the miller might pause briefly to wipe their hands with a damp cloth. Occasionally, a small brush or rag is used to clear dust and remnants from the top of the stones, ensuring the grinding surfaces remain clean and effective. The miller is mindful of the importance of cleanliness in the process, for even a small amount of dirt or debris could spoil a batch of flour or cause uneven wear on the stones. There are ancient, time-worn details involved in this routine. For example, The stones must be dressed periodically, a process that involves scraping the surface with a special tool, the aim being to keep the grinding smooth and effective. Dressing the stones was a skill passed through generations, learned through patience and quiet study, and often done on chilly mornings when the stone surfaces were damp. The tool used was a flat, stone, or metal pick, carefully chipped and shaped, used to remove rough patches and restore a fine surface. The entire process embodies a simple harmony, nature's power harnessed through human skill, with each step designed to produce a quality product without haste or waste. It was common that the miller would work in harmony with the natural flow, respecting the environment's cycles, ensuring the water remained unobstructed, and maintaining the tools and machinery with gentle care. Throughout such a peaceful morning, the surroundings might also be filled with subtle sights, perhaps a flock of sparrows flitting between the trees nearby, or a squirrel noiselessly moving across a branch. The scene remains calm and ordinary, yet deeply rooted in nature and tradition. The distant fields stretch quietly beyond the mill, where crops sway gently under the soft breeze, and the gentle hum of domestic life continues at a slow, predictable pace. As the morning progresses, the sun slowly gains height, casting warm, golden rays through the windows and over the mill's weathered roof. The light filters through the lattice of wooden beams, casting gentle shadows that slowly shift with the passing hours. Inside, the air remains constant, cool, slightly moist, filled with familiar scents and sounds, all contributing to the peaceful rhythm of the day. The process of milling, so often overlooked for its quiet simplicity, embodies a timeless part of everyday life. It was a steady, reliable practice, rooted in tradition and necessity. The miller, in their slow, measured movements, embodies patience and careful attention, respecting the materials, tools, and environment that sustain their work. And in this way, the day begins softly, unfolding naturally, layer by layer, in a gentle harmony of human effort and natural flow. As the light shifts and the world begins to awaken further, this peaceful state persists. The soft sounds of the mill continue, blending into the landscape's quiet melody. The stable, predictable cycle of the morning sustains the atmosphere, a calm and unhurried tapestry woven from simple routines, familiarity, and the gentle persistence of time. As the evening shadows lengthen and the bright sunlight of midday has begun to fade, the mill becomes a place of quiet patience and gentle activity. The soft glow of the waning day filters through the small, often rectangular window openings, casting dim patterns onto the worn stone floors and wooden walls. Shadows stretch long across the thick beams overhead, revealing the careful and deliberate movements of the miller and his family as they carry out their evening tasks. The air grows cooler, carrying with it a faint, earthy aroma, an aroma of grain, water, and the subtle scent of timber that has long been seasoned by time. The scene in the mill during these hours is one of gentle rhythm and routine. The sounds are subdued, soft thuds, the faint scrape of wooden tools, and the occasional murmur of conversation passing between family members working side by side. Often, the day's work was finished by this time, and the focus shifts gently to the maintenance of the mill, the cleaning of tools, and the preparation for the next day. It was a pace that fostered calmness and a deep sense of continuity. The miller's day has been marked by careful attention to each step of the grinding process. His hands, rough yet gentle, move with practiced ease over the millstones. These stones, usually made of a hard, durable material such as granite or quarried sandstone, measure approximately 4 to 5 feet in diameter, larger than a person's height, and are stacked one above the other. The upper stone, known as the runner stone, rotates slowly atop the stationary bedstone. They are connected by a central hole, called the eye, which ensures grain flows smoothly through the grinding surface. In this moment, the miller might be inspecting the stones, their surfaces worn smooth in places yet still rough enough to grip and grind the grain into flour. The process begins in earnest often at dawn, but it is maintained through the day in a steady, even manner. The grain, usually wheat or rye, is poured slowly into the hopper, an open-top container constructed of wood and lined with iron to resist wear. From the hopper, the grain travels down a chute, guided by gravity and simple wooden mechanisms, into the eye of the upper millstone. The grain, as it falls through the narrow opening, begins its journey into the grinding process. The miller often ensures the flow is even, moving the hopper's lid gently to regulate the amount of grain entering the stones. This careful management of the flow ensures the flour produced is uniform and consistent, which was important for baking and trade. Over the course of the day, the miller and his helpers might check on the grinding, adjusting the distance between the stones using a large wooden wedge called a rind, which is tapped gently with a wooden mallet. Within the mill, the smell of freshly ground grain mingles with the scent of warm, damp timber and a faint hint of mineral from the stones. As the stones turn slowly, the grains are crushed, cracked, and then ground finer and finer, until the flour begins to escape from the edges of the stones in a fine, powdery dust. This flour collects on a cloth or in a trough beneath, ready to be sifted and stored. The process is silent but rhythmic, a constant whisper of movement and patience. Behind the scenes, the miller also takes time to check and maintain the water wheel or overshot wheel, which powers the entire operation. The wheel, often built of wood planks joined with iron pins, turns steadily, barely making a sound as it catches the flow of water from a nearby stream or river. During this part of the day, the water's gentle flow is both a calming presence and a constant source of energy. The sound of water rushing over stones or slipping along wooden channels is soothing in its repetitive nature. As dusk approaches, the miller and his family turn their attention to essential repairs and upkeep. The mill, being subject to the elements, needs regular maintenance. The occasional tightening of the wooden gears, the inspection of the water wheel's paddles, and the replacement of worn or cracked stones. These tasks are carried out slowly and carefully, with tools that have been used for generations. A simple wooden wedge or chisel might be employed to adjust a wooden gear tooth, ensuring the mechanisms turn smoothly without unnecessary friction. The tools used within the mill are simple yet effective. Wooden spokes connect the major gears, and iron pins hold parts together, while leather or cloth might be used to cushion noisy parts. Every movement is precise and deliberate, reflecting the care taken to keep the mill functioning without rush or force. It was common that the miller had learned from his father or grandfather how to tend these mechanisms, passing down the knowledge of repairs that kept the mill in good working order for many years. As the evening deepens, the natural light becomes softer, casting a gentle amber hue over the entire scene. Small, handmade oil lamps are brought out, their tiny flames flickering softly, casting warm glows that dance over the wooden beams and stone walls. These lamps roar softly, their gentle crackle and flicker adding to the serenity of the scene. Sometimes, a simple lantern with a glass enclosure is hung from a hook in the center of the room, providing a steady, calming light that helps guide the next round of minor repairs. During this quiet time, the miller might walk around the building, inspecting the outside of the mill for signs of wear or damage. Wooden shutters are closed to keep out the cold night air, often secured with simple iron hooks or latches. The water channel may be cleared of debris, such as fallen leaves or twigs, to ensure the water flow remains steady and unimpeded to power the wheel the next day. This involves careful, slow movements, always avoiding rushing or unnecessary noise. Inside, on a bench or a simple wooden table, tools are carefully laid out: wedge-shaped chisels, small hammers, brush for cleaning grit from the stones, and small pieces of leather or animal hide used for gaskets or pads. Everything is placed in a calming, predictable order, echoing the first hours of the day when work began. The routine of cleaning and repairing is part of the rhythm, a meditative procession of familiar motions that promotes a sense of order and balance. The miller's thoughts at this time are calm and centered. The day has been filled with the steady, unhurried tasks of grinding and maintaining. Nothing is rushed, nothing is pressured. The work is part of the land, part of the water, part of the community. People come with their grain, some entire families, some single farmers, each trusting that the mill will perform its quiet, reliable work. And in this way, the rhythm continues, ebbing and flowing with the passing of the day and the steady motion of water and stone. As the stars gradually begin to twinkle overhead, the mill takes on a tranquil atmosphere. The faint hum of the water wheel becomes almost a lullaby, a steady, soothing sound that echoes softly in the background. The last chores are completed, the tools are cleaned and put away, and the milled grain is stored securely in a wooden bin lined with straw or cloth to keep out moisture. The miller might sit for a brief moment, gazing out through the small window at the peaceful landscape beyond. Perhaps he sees the gentle movement of leaves on trees, or the reflection of starlight shimmering on the water's surface. The land around the mill is quiet now, awaiting the return of dawn, when the cycle of work will begin again, slow and constant as the turning of the water wheel and the grinding of stones. And so, the autumn or winter evening falls into stillness. The coolness of the night seeps slowly into the stones and wooden beams of the mill, and the entire structure becomes a calm sanctuary of routine and quiet care. The smells of wood smoke from nearby hearths, the faint scent of dew on grass, and the gentle whisper of the wind through the trees all contribute to the peaceful atmosphere. Everything remains as it has been for generations, a place of work, patience, and gentle rhythm, softly settling into the long, peaceful night. In this manner, the sleep of the land's quiet machinery is unbroken, and the mill remains silently ready for the dawn of another day's gentle activity. The world outside holds no hurry, no tension, only the tender, unhurried continuation of life, measured by the slow and steady turning of water and the careful, deliberate work of the miller.